Hello and welcome to another episode of the Double A Team live stream, second episode of the 2024 season. We welcome you and we thank you for joining us tonight. I'm your host Steve Nagishi, and with me, as always, is my co-host from Awful Announcing, Ken Fang. Ken, good evening, and how are you doing tonight?
Well, let's just give you a warning ahead of time. We are in the right here where I live in Rhode Island. We are in the midst of some heavy winds and rain. Um, there could be a very distinct possibility that I could lose power in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of the podcast. So, if it happens, you'll see lights go off here, and I'll lose connection. So, but
Okay.
if that happens, we'll deal with it. But that's what's
Mm-hmm.
happening here. We're dealing with some heavy winds and some heavy rain here, and I live in an area. If you just breathe on the wires, we'll lose power. So we're in a situation where we could lose it at a moment's notice. So just to let you know, and so
Mm-hmm.
if we go out, don't worry. It's just the power going out here where I am in Rhode Island.
Yeah, I'm in the metropolitan Kansas City area, and we had a snow that kept on falling last night, and then this morning we had like a couple of inches of snow. So schools were canceled. There was a very little traffic. I left work very late because of it too, and we were supposed to record at the around 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 my time, but I just wanted to be extra careful driving in a wet condition. So we thank you for joining us tonight, and we'll try and get as much as possible before Ken is expected to lose his power because of the snowstorm. So anybody out there tonight living in the up and down the eastern shore, eastern coast, who is dealing with what Ken is also dealing right now. We thank you for joining us, and we wish that you guys are safe and that you guys will be able to get through this. All right, let's talk about the NFL. The season officially came to an end on Sunday, Ken, and we all know the wild card picture. We'll get to that in a minute, but already some of the coaches have been let go today. Today, the bombshell report of Mike Vrabel, the now former Tennessee Titans head coach, was fired after the ownership, Amy Adams Strunk, who is the probably the widow of the late Bud Adams, made that official, and that didn't have the patience to try and trade him, presumably to New England, where he started as linebacker and was long been rumored to be a successor to Bill Belichick, whose status is very much up in the air, and I'm sure you can touch on that in a little bit. But certainly, there are some more coaches fired. Arthur Smith, the Falcons head coach, who kind of went out in a disgrace after the season finale against the Falcons and the Saints, where Saints scored a garbage time touchdown where he yelled at the Dennis Allen, the Saints head coach, which was somewhat of a fitting end because he never really got the traction. 3 straight 7 and 10 seasons. Promptly fired. His job had long been rumored to be on the line, and he failed to close out his deal. Am I missing any other coaches who was any head coach who got fired? That's pretty much it, right? At this point.
Well, we also know that there's going to be some
Yeah.
traction in other areas. Coaches who have already been fired. Las Vegas Raiders, even though Antonio Pierce has the support of the locker room, I think the ownership there with Mark Davis is going to see what happens with Jim Harbaugh. He's hoping that Harbaugh will be declaring that after the Michigan win over Washington last night. I think he's hoping that Jim Harbaugh will be ready and be open. The Los Angeles Chargers, which fired Brandon Staley, are hoping to get a sniff of the Harbaugh pipe as well.
Yeah.
They followed Staley earlier this season. And I think there's still the whole up in the air. We'll talk about this later, whether Matt Eberflus is going to be staying or not. Eberflus, of course, we talked about this earlier, Stephen, that he certainly looked a month ago like he was going to be out, but the Bears have improved. But there's a possibility that I would say maybe I'd say a 30% chance that he goes. But overall, right now, there's I think about 6 coaches coaching open, 6 coaching openings that are right now official.
Right, and I forgot to mention, Washington fired
Ron Rivera, yes, they fired Ron Rivera yesterday as well.
Already as well, so we apologize.
Of course, you mentioned the possibility of Bill Belichick up here where I live in New England. That is a distinct possibility as well. Tom Curran of NBC Sports Boston was the first to report last month that Robert Kraft has made up his mind, but Bill Belichick stressed in his season-ending press conference on Monday that he is still under contract. So I think Belichick is going to try to stay, and we'll see what happens because there's many things that are happening. They're all fluid. Things are going to change even right after we probably right after we do this podcast, Stephen, things will probably change. So, you just never know. But those are the coaching openings that are happening right now. We know the Raiders possibility, the Chargers definitely, the Washington Commanders, the Tennessee Titans, the Atlanta Falcons. Those are definite right now, and there's a possibility of the New England Patriots and maybe the Chicago Bears. So those are some of the things that we open up. Then let's, if you wish to have a statement, you can come on in and make a comment right here to us, whether through YouTube or through X, Twitter. We love to hear what your thoughts are. In the meantime, Stephen, let's talk about the surprise today with Mike Vrabel. That happened right around noontime. As a matter of fact, Rich Eisen was on the air when it would happen, and I think he was talking to Taylor Lewan live on the Rich Eisen show when it happened, and everyone was really surprised by that. I think it caught the insiders who were streaming on NFL Plus. That was happening right when they were live on streaming as well, and on SportsCenter. It caught everybody by surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. Absolutely. This was a real surprise, and Mike Vrabel, I think he did a fantastic job in Tennessee with the limitations on the roster. Ryan Tannehill as a quarterback, somewhat of a mid-range quarterback, and then relied heavily on, Derrick Henry, who had to say his goodbye immediately after, a win over the Jacksonville Jaguars to knock them out of the playoffs. But it also happens to be Henry's possible final game with the Tennessee Titans because, he is 30 years old and he is a free agent. And there aren't that many running backs, 30 and over that gets a lot of interest out there. Maybe possibly a limited role with like a Super Bowl contender, perhaps. Maybe Henry's possible destination starting next year. But Mike Vrabel got a lot out of the Tennessee Titans. I think 6 years he won 3 division titles, took them even to the AFC Championship. That was was that the COVID year, or was it the year the Chiefs won their first champion in a long time, first Super Bowl champion? Yeah, probably around 2020, January 2020 playoffs. So this is a coach who is very much proven, and that I know Tennessee. A former GM, John Robinson, who's long been, I think he was fired earlier this year, made a real bad choice with the roster construction. Most noticeably, he traded away A.J. Brown to the Philadelphia Eagles. and never really adequately replaced him. They signed DeAndre Hopkins, but Hopkins, unfortunately, he's 31 and have been dealing with some injuries, the last couple of years. So he's not the same receiver. And, they went with Will Levis, but, only got a handful of starts before they had to rely on Tannehill again to finish out the season. But, I don't know if which is a worse situation right now, the Titans or the Carolina Panthers. I would say Titans is certainly a much better team, but I know a lot of insiders were completely caught off guard by this firing. It's hard for me to imagine that the Titans would be able to hire somebody as good as Vrabel. I think it's going to be a very, very difficult situation for Tennessee to hire somebody that they think can do a better job than Mike Vrabel. And, the way that their roster is constructed, I think, they have to figure out a quarterback situation, sort that out. I'm not sure if Will Levis is the long-term answer there. Tannehill's a free agent, so he's likely going to go somewhere where he can probably get a more decent playing time. But again, this is a veteran in his 30s, so I think we all know what Tannehill is at this point. So don't expect anything significant to come out of there. But Derrick Henry gone. They have some decent players on the defensive side, but this team, along with Carolina, they could be competing for the worst record in the NFL next season, in my opinion, Ken.
Right. You see there, this was off the Awful Announcing website today. Amy Adams Strunk, as you noticed there, she's the daughter of Bud Adams. She
was daughter. Okay, I referred to as a widow. My apologies.
Yeah. So she won the struggle of the Adams children to take over the team. I think Bud Adams had stipulated he wanted to sell the team. But anyway, she won the right. She has the control of the team. And instead of doing a press conference, she elected to do, as you see here on Awful Announcing, that she elected to do an interview with the play-by-play announcer, Mike Keith, and this way releasing her and not having to face any tough questions. It's a very interesting thing here that why she elected to do that. It was a 5-minute interview. There you see it. Because of copyright issues, we can't play it. But you can see there that one of the really silly things there is that instead of facing the media, instead of facing questions, instead of going facing questions from the media, Amy Adams Strunk elected to just do this in-house interview with Mike Keith. And Mike Keith, he's put in a tough situation. He's an employee of the team, but
he's a play-by-play guy too. Yes.
Yeah, and he's not. He's not independent, so he's an employee of the team. He has to sit there and basically act as the representative for all the reporters, and he's not going to ask a tough question. We all know that, and he has to be put in a tough situation to sit there for 5 minutes next to the team owner, where she's just explaining what she wants to do. And she's the owner. It's her right, but at the same time, you have Mike Vrabel there, Stephen, and as you mentioned, his hands were tied. I felt bad for him. I thought for sure he was going to be sticking around, but apparently, from what's come out now, Vrabel had to deal with some bad situations, and of course, Ryan Tannehill, who was going to be a free agent, he was starting yesterday. And they managed to spoil the Jacksonville Jaguars' opportunity to get into the playoffs, and good for the Titans to go out on a good note. But still, I just feel bad for Mike Vrabel. Now there's going to be speculation by the Ohio State alumni because he's an Ohio State guy. He might replace Mike Day. The Patriot fans up here are going to say, "Oh, why don't we get him instead and get rid of Bill Belichick?" He's a Patriots guy, and he was elected. He was inducted into the Patriots Hall of Fame earlier this year. I mean,
Yeah.
back in November, actually. So last year. So all this is very fluid, Stephen. But again, you don't want to be where you're not wanted. And Mike Vrabel, whose track record is excellent, he's a winning coach. Granted, the last 2 seasons weren't great for him, but I think his hands were tied because of personnel issues. He did what he could. The players liked him. The locker room liked him. So, wherever he goes, and I'm sure that the teams that have openings and even the teams that don't have openings would be very interested in Mike Vrabel.
Yeah, he shouldn't have any difficulty finding a job. He doesn't have to probably sit and beg for a job.
No.
For the lack of better terms, I think the teams will be calling. You mentioned Ohio State could, call him if they wanted to, and move on from Ryan Day. Unfortunately, I don't think Vrabel's ready to go back to college just yet. So I think the logical idea, and it makes so much sense if you connect the dots, is that Vrabel would likely to be a Bill Belichick successor. I don't know if Bill Belichick is willing to step down to make room for Vrabel. Maybe Vrabel might join as an assistant head coach / DC to perhaps succeed Belichick at around 2025 or so. Maybe that's something that could be in the cards between Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick. So that might be, an interesting idea to be floated around. So it will be very interesting to see what Vrabel does, because I can see Vrabel, excuse me, being a much better head coach than maybe at least a third of the teams with their head coaching situation right now. And that includes my Chicago Bears, which I'm going to get to right now.
Okay.
I had to witness the Packers beating the Bears once again this past Sunday, 17-9. Nobody should be, fooled by that score. Both, offense and defense struggle badly. The Packers dominated on both sides of the trenches. The Bears really never had any traction. They settled for 3 field goals. And, this is as far as I think, Matt Eberflus can take this team. This is, he's a mediocre head coach, and this is probably his ceiling. I think both Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren shouldn't be fooled into thinking that, he's going to get any better at this point on with a brand new quarterback, presumably Caleb Williams, at number 1. I don't think he's going to get any better. As a defensive coordinator, the conservativeness of this man's scheme and his coaching style isn't going to suddenly dramatically transform all of a sudden. This is who he is. This is how he got to where he is now, and it's difficult for somebody like him to all of a sudden change his routine and his his philosophy. So I know that the gut says you should move on from him, and Ryan Poles is probably having a little bit of a tug of war within himself. His heart says, I want to give this man an opportunity. Certainly, I've stated before that both Poles and Eberflus share the same agent, and there might be some sort of a bit of an influence being played out. But if Ryan Poles is dead serious about keeping his job, not just this year and beyond that, and he certainly earned the rights to keep that job, this year with the acquisition of DJ Moore, Tyreek Stevenson, and also Carolina's number 1 pick, which is the first overall. And if you're having some second thoughts about who you are, as your head coach, then you don't have a strong conviction. You might as well just move on and make sure to set a rookie quarterback and the same head coach in the same timeline. We've seen this BS played out with John Fox and Mitchell Trubisky, Matt Nagy with Mitchell Trubisky, Matt Nagy and Justin Fields. It's not a good mix. There isn't any smart offensive coach, an OC candidate willing to take the offensive coordinator job. Let's say, for example, Luke Getsy becomes a scapegoat. Eberflus is on the hot seat. No one's going to come and take that job, knowing that Eberflus is going to be fired. Now, there are some rumors that Frank Reich, his former boss at Indianapolis Colts, when Reich was a head coach and Eberflus was a DC, could come in. I don't know. There's a rumor that Reich is leaning towards retirement, considering the money that he's being paid by the both Colts and the Carolina Panthers to, maybe sit on the beach or, just sit comfortably at home. I don't think he's eager to come back and try and save his former, his colleague, if you will, bail him out. It's a difficult position. Certainly, Reich has had a lot of quarterbacks that are very similar, like Carson Wentz with both Philadelphia and Indianapolis, Phillip Rivers 1 year, and then Matt Ryan with the Indianapolis Colts in his final year. So, and then this past year with the Carolina Panthers, he wanted C.J. Stroud, but the ownership went with Bryce Young, and he struggled badly. So at least I give him credit that the C.J. Stroud is a much better quarterback, but I don't know how much of a success he would have enjoyed with Carolina with their dysfunctional owner organization and the a roster that is basically near bottom in the entire NFL. So I'm not so sure if Frank Reich is the right choice, and this is going to be a very interesting test. I don't think, Matt Eberflus is capable of attracting a decent offensive coordinator because of the situation he put himself in. And let's not forget the two assistants who left and was fired because of a numerous human resources violation. That's on him too. He's the man who hired these men. So I don't know if he has the acumen to hire the right coaches. Building a great staff is one of the strengths of any head coach in any organization, and Matt Eberflus hasn't been able to done that, and I don't think he's able to do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've been scrolling through while you've been talking there. From the site.
There's my friend Rashab Shakiri from the Windy Seed Production. Yes, right.
Yes,
there's a tweet there.
Bears from Bears Wire. Bears fans cannot believe that Matt Eberflus still has a job after Mike Vrabel was fired, and of course, the Bears fans are saying, "Hey, look, you've got great candidates out there. Let's bring in a legitimate coach." And with all the candidates out there, why is Eberflus still there? So that's the first tweet that was on the page right there, Stephen. But
right, yeah, I know they're taking their time and deliberating, and I understand. But if you're Ryan Poles, and I'll say this again, tying yourself to Matt Eberflus is not a smart career decision. Next year, if the things are the same or even worse, let's just say, for example, you're going to set yourself up to be fired along with Matt Eberflus because Kevin Warren, the new team president, didn't hire neither man. And when Kevin Warren is expected to face more scrutiny in 2024, it's going to be easy for him to get rid of both men because, quite frankly, he didn't hire neither man, and he can probably say, "I gave both men a shot. They failed, and now I'm ready to move on and hire, new GM and a new coach, and they will coexist together." Remember, Poles didn't even hire Eberflus himself. He was given a list of candidates, the finalists, that was put together by the chairman, George McCaskey, former Colts GM, Bill Polian, and outgoing team president, Ted Phillips. So it's not a good look for Ryan Poles to just pick somebody out of the list that was given to you, and that happens to be a man who he shares the same agent with. So, hopefully he gets the opportunity, and he should have some sort of a urgency within himself that if he fails, he's not going to get another job with another NFL team as the general manager anytime soon. So that should hopefully play into his favor. And there has to be some sort of an urgency right now that with the Packers kicking your ass once again, and the Detroit Lions surpassing you to win the division this past year. And the Minnesota Vikings, they're not going to, be as bad as this past year, given that Justin Jefferson was injured and their quarterback situation was a disaster. They have a good team. They have a great stadium. Of course, Kevin Warren should know because he's the man who's responsible for getting that stadium deal done up in Minnesota. So the division is still, more than likely be run by Detroit and Green Bay. And, you really have to do a lot of, uplifting to hire the right coach and the right roster to elevate that team. And I think the Bears are very close. But only if you hire the right coach, you can fulfill that potential, in my opinion.
Right. And it's something that we'll be keeping an eye on, Stephen. I know that as a Bears fan and as a diehard Bears fan, you live and die with the team. And, in the 2 years that I've known you, and the 2 years that we've done this show, I know how much it means to you, and to see and you want to see the Bears' success. You want to see you want to see something and feel what I feel with the Browns. Although for a couple of years we were both feeling the same thing about our teams, but right now, you want to get good management and a good coach and a guy who will commit, and a management that will commit, and hopefully Kevin Warren will do the right thing. We don't know what Ryan Poles is going to be doing. Poles is it seems to be a guy who just hides under when the going gets tough. He'll hide under his desk, and that's not what you want with a general manager. You want a general manager. No. You want a general manager who comes out and does the right thing.
He has to have a strong conviction about what he does.
Yes,
and he has to be, he doesn't need to, make people happy. His job is to certainly make a tough decision, and he needs to have a strong belief and conviction to do that. This is going to be a litmus test for both Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren, who was quoted on Sunday's CBS coverage that he as in Matt Eberflus reminds him of Dick Vermeil, which is ridiculous because Dick Vermeil, at least he was somebody who took the Philadelphia Eagles to Super Bowl before his long hiatus from the coaching job and took the broadcasting job. So at least he was proven. Okay, so it's a ridiculous to try and compare, a Hall of Fame head coach like Vermeil to a mediocre head coach that is Matt Eberflus. I think is a bit of an insult to Dick Vermeil's legacy, but we'll see. I know that Kevin Warren is a deal maker. Like I said, he got the Minnesota Stadium done. And he's trying to do the same with the Chicago, whether it's Arlington Heights or somewhere in Chicago. But you have to have a right product. You need to have a strong team in order to make sure that the brand new stadium is fitting, because the stadium impact will wear off in a year or so when the team or the product itself sucks. So, again, we'll keep an eye out on this situation. Tomorrow, I think there's going to be a meeting with the management between Kevin Warren, Ryan Poles, and Matt Eberflus. So tomorrow, I'm going to give a heads up to Rashad Shakiri and special guest Bo Tilley and myself. We're going to be recording if anything is going to happen. And hopefully something does happen tomorrow with the coaching front. And all three of us are going to have a lot to say about the Bears' decision whether to fire or stay with Matt Eberflus, and stay tuned for that tomorrow, perhaps around this time, to have a real honest discussion about the direction of the Bears this offseason. So, Ken, now let's move on to another subject here. Yesterday's college football championship. And I got to tell you, I'm sure you probably saw the game from the get-go. And I must say that, Michigan just completely obliterated the Washington Huskies. And what stood out to you about yesterday's game from your perspective?
Well, for a while it was a defensive battle. At first, Michigan had two great touchdowns yesterday, and they went ahead 14-3, and it looked like they were going to blow Washington out of the building. But then Michigan went away from the run, and then for some reason went for it on fourth down with a pass, and that put Washington back in the game. And the thing is that once this was a defensive battle, we saw what the situation was. It's kind of settled in. It was 2013 for a while, but also at the same time, Washington's receivers just couldn't catch a pass. They somehow, for some reason, they got City Chiefs disease and just couldn't catch a pass. And despite how well the balls were thrown, the Huskies just couldn't get the job done. And then finally, Michigan installed its will. Blake Corum finally scored 2 late touchdowns. They got an interception late. I don't put it on Michael Penix because this is a defense that he has never seen before. He got punished and punished. And granted, he was in the Big Ten before with Indiana, and then transferred over to Washington when his offensive coordinator went out to Washington. He transferred with him, but Michael Penix, who is going to be a first round draft pick, and hopefully, I would love to see him. Maybe the Patriots could draft him. He's going to be he will definitely be a top 5 pick, I do believe. He's a guy, and
Michael Penix.
Yeah. Well, I think someone's going to draft him high.
I don't know. His medicals are real.
His medicals. That's just it. That's the issue. And not only that, his age is. He's 26.
Yesterday's game was a real eye opener because I know he struggled yesterday to deal with the Michigan's blitz and the way Michigan dominated yesterday's game. I know. I don't want to make one game isn't going to, determine the person's future and the outcome. But, he did struggle. There's no question about it. And I think when you look back at yesterday's game, Ken, this is a play, I think, that really broke the camel's back. This is the 4th and 7 play where the score was 17-3. This was, I believe, was in the second quarter. And I think Odunze beat a secondary, and Penix and Odunze was not on the same page here. So I'm going to play this one right here.
Okay, yeah, that's that was very wide open. This ball should have been a connection, Stephen. You just can't miss that.
The play they needed to turn this around, just overthrown.
That typified the game right there, Stephen. Penix had a great chance to make the connection, overthrew him for some reason.
Right.
Yeah, but to be honest with you, Penix was getting hit all night long.
He was really bad.
Yeah, Michigan really gave him. He hasn't seen a defense like that all season long in the Pac-12. Granted, the Pac-12 was a little bit more wide open than the Big Ten, but the great defensive job by Michigan yesterday to keep Penix off balance and keep hitting him. You could see at the end of the game he was limping. So now I do still think he has a great chance to be a very good quarterback in the NFL. But I'll be honest with you. Last night he had an opportunity to raise his game a bit, but Michigan's defense was preventing that all night long. And It didn't help that his receivers weren't catching passes either. There were a lot of drops, a lot of great opportunities.
Overthrown passes too. Yes, there's no question.
But there was one opportunity which it seemed like they were going to make a catch. A controversial holding call brought a long game back, and of course, Washington fans are a little bit angry about that call, about how Michigan seemed to get away with a lot of holding calls, but Washington was called on that holding call. But still. Yeah. Overall, I think the right team won last night, Stephen.
Yeah, it's I know Michigan took a lot of flack because of the Connor Stallions and the cheating, sign stealing, cheating scandal, and I know a lot of people are probably still bitter about that and comparing that to the way Astros won the World Series because of their sign stealing stuff. And neither one of us are obviously well versed enough to get into the conversation of comparing both two, so we're going to avoid that. But yeah, I know somebody I saw on Twitter today that there was a bit of a funny insult that the guys from the Midwest, of course, being Michigan, they eat meat and potatoes and build strong muscles, while the guys from the West Coast, of course, referring to Washington, they eat quinoa and, are vegetarians or something like that. So I thought it was a funny analogy there. And it was let's call it what it is. It was a total beatdown, an ass kicking. And when Michael Penix threw an interception on the first play on the second half, I think it just completely deflated the Washington fans and the Washington. You just can't do that on the first play after halftime when you were licking your wounds and you're ready to come out, and and then your star quarterback throws an errant pass that was picked off. That just really, really takes the air out of it. So it's unfortunate that that's how Michael Penix's career ends. It's a night and day compared to what he did against the Texas Longhorns. Obviously, Texas, in the Big 12, and Big 12, they don't play that much of a defense, unfortunately, either. So they were able to take advantage of that. And Michigan wins their first title since 1997, when Lloyd Carr was the head coach, and Charles Woodson also won the Heisman Trophy, as he still remains the only defensive player to win the Heisman Trophy. So congratulations to Michigan. And now, for Michigan.
Also, there was a kid named Brady who was on the team as well.
That's right.
So, so it's interesting to see what happens, what will happen. But Jim Harbaugh, he was brought on to win a championship. He got the job done. And now, as you can see there, where's he going to go? We talked about it earlier in the show. The Las Vegas Raiders are certainly interested in him. Harbaugh has a contract ready to be signed with Michigan if he wants to stay there. He certainly has the tools there and the coaching staff if he wants to build a dynasty at Michigan. But we've seen him get restless. He got restless in San Francisco when he didn't get along with the general manager, and he went back to Michigan.
Right. Trent Baalke is a terrible GM. There's no question about that.
Yeah. So. And there's a situation now where he can basically call his shot. He's won a national championship. He can stay at Michigan. He can be a lifer at Michigan. He could become this generation's Bo Schembechler, be the Michigan man, win multiple championships if he wants to. Yeah. Or he can go to the NFL and say, hey, I'm going to try and be like my brother and win a Super Bowl. Very funny statement yesterday after the during the post-game press conference, says that he can now sit at the big boy table now that his father won a championship at Western Kentucky, and now that his brother won a Super Bowl, he's now won a national championship. But he also did make a very interesting statement to Scott Van Pelt after that press conference, stating that he has postponed spring practice at Ann Arbor So that made Michigan fans say, "Oh, he's going to stay." I'm like, no, that he hasn't said anything like that. But
Right.
he certainly can call his shot, Steven. He
Yeah.
can go to the NFL if he wants to, or he can stay at Michigan. I do believe that he's going to go to the NFL, but stranger things have happened, Steven. We've seen this the whole thing play out before with other coaches, and they use it as a contract ploy to get more money out of where they are. So we'll see what happens.
Right, and he hired a super agent, Don Yee, who's an Asian American and somebody who is known to have represented a quarterback by the name of Tom Brady, and of course another Michigan alum himself. So, I'll be very curious to see what this means. But I totally agree. I think Harbaugh is going to go to the NFL. I think his ego is now that he wants to win the Super Bowl and be on the par or even better than his brother John, who by the way beat him in the Super Bowl 47, more than 10 years ago. So I think that still is inside of him, and I think because of what happened with the sign stealing scandal involving Connor Stallions and all that stuff, the investigation I believe is still ongoing, and chances are the wins that the Michigan has gotten under Harbaugh, maybe 2-3 years, they might have to vacate. It's a similar situation with USC, involving Pete Carroll, if you remember, involving Reggie Bush. So, and Carroll ended up leaving USC when the sanctions were about to be handed over, and he ended up bolting to Seattle, which worked out for him very, very well. But I think a lot of people will remember, Pete Carroll for being a bit of a coward there. So we'll see what happens with Jim Harbaugh. I think Jim knows that, there's nothing he can do about that investigation. Certainly maybe the walls might start to close in on him about his awareness, acknowledgement of the sign stealing, and if he was actually involved or calling the shots there. So I think Jim will leave perhaps as soon as next week, and then announces that he's going to resign and start pursuing the NFL dream. And it's going to be very, very interesting. I would love to see my Bears take a shot at it. I think he is the kind of person that can jolt a franchise that has been on the downward swings and hasn't been relevant with the likes of the Packers, within their own division for the last decade or so. So he can definitely bring some jolt. Very interesting to see if Kevin Warren and the Jim Harbaugh relationship isn't as bad as many think, because they had a fallout back in 2020 with the COVID when Warren was a commissioner and wanted to cancel the Big Ten football season, but Harbaugh and the others resisted. So people say that there's a hard feelings involved, but we'll see what happens if the ownership would sign off a larger than life personality that reminds them of Mike Ditka. So if not the Bears, I would say some teams on the West Coast, the Las Vegas Raiders, or the Los Angeles Chargers. He has a strong connections coaching on the West Coast. He coached in University of San Diego, Stanford, and San Francisco 49ers. So maybe there's something on the living in the West Coast that suits Jim just fine. And will be very interesting to see if there's going to be another team emerges once the playoff settles, and they might decide that they're going to move on from Harbaugh and just try and make a run at Jim Harbaugh's services. So congratulations to Michigan Wolverines, and it will be interesting to see if Harbaugh stays, and if Harbaugh does stay, can he make them a dynasty? Michigan is not exactly what you call a Alabama or Georgia. you always going to have some sort of a limitations recruiting players. But Michigan brand is very strong, and maybe more than likely they might be able to attract more kids from powerhouses state like Florida, California, and Texas. And they've had a lot of great players that they've recruited from those three states that usually produce tremendous stars. So it will be very, very interesting to see if they are able to now ply away, players that normally goes to Alabama and Georgia, the SECs that have speed, quickness, and agility, that they are able to complement their, big, beefy trench plays on offense and defense. And then if they're able to add more speedy wide receivers and quick, tight ends who can stretch the field, and with a quarterback that is capable of making any sort of throws, especially in harsh winter conditions, I think Michigan is going to be able to build a great dynasty moving forward.
I agree with that, Stephen. I mean, you remember it's kind of interesting how this happened. A Midwestern school won the very first college football, like the bowl championship series, and when they had
that was Ohio State.
Ohio State, and they were able to parlay that to, and of course they won another championship down the road in the similar format. But when you win a national championship, it does wonders for your brand. It does wonders for your school. It does wonders for your coach. It's provided that Harbaugh stays. And if Harbaugh doesn't stay, it'll be interesting to see who follows him. Michigan after Lloyd Carr, and then they went to Rich Rod, and they had all types of disastrous coaches and disastrous situations there. Yeah. It took Harbaugh many years to clean it up. It took him about 6 years to clean it up until about 2020, when he almost got threatened to be fired. It took a pay cut, but it took him about 6 years to fix everything. And then finally that uphill trajectory for about 3 years, Stephen. But a national championship does wonders for you. It brings kids in. It brings in kids that normally you may not get. So if Harbaugh stays, and that's a big if right now, but let's say he does. Let's say Michigan says, hey, look, you did the national championship. Let's make you someone here. You stay for life. Let's give you the lifetime contract. Let's say he stays there. Imagine all the type of kids that go over there and want to play for Jim Harbaugh. And he brought the national championship to Michigan, the first one since 1997. So that does a lot of things for your brand. It does a lot of things for your school. It does a lot of things for recruiting. It does a lot of things for your endowment. So we'll have to wait and see. But if Harbaugh goes, then all bets are off, of course.
All right, let's transition into NFL playoff bracket. I know we were discussing the NFL a little bit earlier, so I forgot to probably continue on with the coverage here. But the playoffs are set now, and excuse me, and your Cleveland Browns, Ken, you are going into Houston to play the Houston Texans, a Cinderella team. So this is going to be a very interesting test. The winner of this game play the number one overall seed on the AFC, Baltimore Ravens, and then on Saturday here below on Peacock, the Miami, who lost to Buffalo and lost the division, has to go to Kansas City, the third seed, and play what is expected to be one of the coldest game in NFL history. And I live out here and we're expected that the temperature is going to be in single digits, believe it or not. So
that's
probably like a 9 or 8 degrees game time.
Okay.
So
let's put it this way.
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah. The game is on Peacock, as you mentioned, and there's a lot of people who are very angry about that. We at Awful Announcing were tipped off that the fact that this was probably going to be the Kansas City Chiefs, no matter what happened. They wanted to put a good team there. A lot of people said, well, why don't you put a bad game there? Why don't you put the Cleveland Browns and the Houston Texans on there? Well, that's not the point. You're going to you want to increase subscriptions. And this is not going to be a one-time thing, by the way. This is probably going to be this is going to be what we're seeing is a new normal here, folks. You are going to be seeing the more games on streaming. I wouldn't be surprised if Amazon gets the rights to a game next season, and how's Al Michaels calling it. But anyway, yeah. So we've got Cleveland and Houston. The Texans, of course, in their memorial, their usual early Saturday afternoon slot in the afternoon, just kick off the playoffs. And they've done that. Remember, for a while they seemed to be. They were in whenever they were in the wild card game. That was always the ESPN slot, and they'd always get it. I think it happened for 6 years in a row. So they're back there again, hosting the as the AFC South champion, hosting the wild card Cleveland Browns. The Browns beat them. If you remember earlier in the season, the Browns beat the Texans in Houston earlier this season. So this is a possibility that. Now, granted, Houston is playing much better now than they did earlier in the season when Cleveland beat them. But I have a feeling that with this defense, and you have Joe Flacco, an experienced quarterback, the Browns are favored in this game. They're one of the only two road favorites in this game, along with the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think it's going to be a good game, and I will pick my Browns to defeat the Houston Texans. I think I will pick them to win outright. That's how confident I am in this. And in Joe Flacco,
right. And the Browns beat the Houston Texans a couple of weeks ago.
That's what I said. Yep.
So it's not like they're going into a unfamiliar territory. Now I understand playoff is a different animal, but that was a pretty good victory by your Browns against the Texans. So let's see if the Texans are without any, does not lack motivation, certainly because it was a pretty bad beating that they were given by the Browns. And, certainly, Texans have a lot to play for, and they should be really, really motivated for this one. This should be a very exciting game to kick off the wild card weekend. And then on Sunday, Pittsburgh hosting the Buffalo hosting Pittsburgh, two teams that was on the downhill not too long ago. And now both teams are on the upward swing. So this is going to be a very interesting game. Buffalo, certainly as a number 2 seed team, it was something that I think neither one of us was able to imagine not too long ago, and they're on the upswing. Pittsburgh with third stringer Mason Rudolph. Can he be like a Cinderella that leads the Pittsburgh Steelers to an upset? This is going to be a very interesting storyline here. The winner of the Saturday's Miami-Kansas City game will face the winner of Pittsburgh-Buffalo game the following week as well. And then on the NFC side, looking back here, the Rams hosting the Lions on Saturday. Matthew Stafford making his it's on Sunday. Sunday
night. That's a Sunday night game.
Sunday night, yep. Here, this is a very interesting game here on Sunday night. Thankfully, you're able to watch this game on NBC rather than Peacock. The Rams heading to Detroit to play the Lions. Matthew Stafford making his first triumphant return to play the team that was drafted and was run out of town not too long ago. And, the Detroit Lions certainly are going to will do everything they can to probably make his return a very miserable and a hostile one. But this is going to be a very interesting matchup here. Obviously that's a juicy storyline there. Brad Holmes, the Lions general manager, was a long-time front office man with the Rams, so there's a very interesting storyline there as well. I know a lot of people have the Rams because they are more battle-tested than the Lions. Rams winning a Super Bowl not too long ago might be able to pull an upset here. And then earlier Sunday game, you have the Dallas Cowboys, who now is the 2nd seed, facing the 7th seed Green Bay Packers. And the winner of this two Sunday matchups here, they're likely to move on and face each other. There's a possibility that, you could see two NFC North teams facing each other. Detroit certainly can get the job done. And then Green Bay going in to face the
I don't
Mike
see that
McCarthy.
happening. With Dallas playing so well at home, Steven, I see that Dallas Cowboys winning that
Well, it
game.
will be very, very interesting because I know Mike McCarthy used to coach the Packers, and there are some rumblings that McCarthy's job might be somewhat on shakier grounds if they don't get too far in the playoffs. And if God forbid they lose to the Packers, and by the way, Packers do have some momentum coming into this one.
Sure.
There is a possibility that Mike McCarthy, ironically, could get ousted from the Cowboys job, courtesy of the team that he coached for a long, long time. And then you have the 49ers, who's the number one seed, awaiting on Monday night, Martin Luther King holiday. Probably the second straight year you have the Eagles playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's quite shocking to see how bad the Eagles have fallen after they beat the Chiefs. They were riding high. They got the revenge on the Super Bowl, and then they just completely, completely crapped themselves. And now they have to go to Tampa Bay to play the Buccaneers. Now, when the Eagles are on, I think they should be able to, manhandle a team like Tampa Bay, even though they have to go on the road. But with this Eagle teams, I really have no idea where they are right now.
Steven, they can't stop anybody. And if you can't beat the Cardinals, and you can't, and especially that stinker that they played against the Giants on Sunday, I really have a feeling that Tampa Bay is going to beat them. I don't have any confidence in their defense. They can't stop anybody. They can't. Their offense is having issues. I really have a feeling that Tampa Bay is going to win that game, even though Philadelphia is coming in favored. I don't think that the Eagles have given me no confidence that they can stop anybody. I think Tampa Bay will win this on a last second field goal because the defense just can't make stops, and they just can't. Ever since the Dallas Cowboys ran them out of Arlington on a Sunday night. And the San Francisco 49ers also did the same to them. That was the blueprint how to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. They were going into the season like 10-1 at that point, or 10-2, but now they have just in essence, Steven, just fallen apart. And I don't see the Eagles. I think they're one and done in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, this is going to be a big test. As a defending NFC champions, going from a Super Bowl runner-up to getting ousted in the first round by a lesser team like Tampa Bay is a stunning fall from grace. And certainly that will probably put their head coach, Nick Sirianni, in a very, very awkward position. So, I don't think it's but crazier things have happened.
Changes on the coaching. Yeah, I mean, he made a different. He put Matt Patricia in charge of the defense and calling the defensive signals. Matt Patricia, who has had a big fall of grace ever since he left the New England Patriots and tried to become the Detroit Lions coach, and then also was the offensive coordinator for some reason for Mac Jones at the New England Patriots. His star has fallen quite a bit, and if your defense can't stop the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which I don't think they will, I don't think Matt Patricia is going to be staying too long in Philadelphia.
Absolutely. So there are a lot of interesting storylines on this wild card weekend. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on it. And then our next broadcast, we're going to be able to look back and talk about the next round of NFC divisional playoffs. That's going to be very, very interesting. Yep. Well, Ken, let's try and end the show on a very, very awkward note. Certainly, we are not able to play the clip, but the battle between Jimmy Kimmel and Aaron Rodgers has been quite a
It's stupid.
burning.
It's really
Yeah,
it's stupid. Yeah.
it is.
Um,
And I know Kimmel, took a shot at the Rodgers because of the Rodgers suggesting that Jimmy Kimmel's name is on the list of a person who was associated with the late oh God, Epstein. I forgot his first name. Sorry, Ken, help me out here.
Jeffrey Epstein.
Jeffrey Epstein. Yes, thank you. Casually suggesting on the Pat McAfee show, where he's been a regular the entire regular NFL season, making some wild accusations and statement like that. So, and needless to say, Kimmel didn't take it very, very well, and rightfully so. And Aaron Rodgers went to Pat McAfee show once again and offer a very half-ass apologies about.
It was an apology. There was no apology.
No, it was right. It was a non-apology, I should say. Excuse me, non-apology about suggesting that about him suggesting Kimmel will be on the list of Jeffrey Epstein's plane or hanging out with him, which he never should have said. He doesn't have a claim. He admitted to that. And, Rodgers, unfortunately, has become a real pariah. And the ESPN continuing to enable him and Pat McAfee, who just basically sits there and just worries what comes out of Rodgers' mouth, unable to do anything about that.
Yeah. It's really. ESPN is in a no-win situation. They know what they're going to get with Pat McAfee. They signed him for a reason, to bring in a younger audience, and also to try and monetize what they're doing with the on YouTube. He's on 1 hour on YouTube, 2 hours on ESPN. Of course, Pat McAfee last week said that he was being sabotaged by ESPN executive Norby Williamson. Ahead of the ratings announcement by ESPN, stating that Pat McAfee is doing well. Apparently, Norby leaked a story to. This is what Pat McAfee says. He says that Pat McAfee is trying to sabotage him. He said apparently that he went to the New York Post to try and leak a story about his ratings not being that great. So, I've dealt with Norby a few times. I've talked with him a couple of times. He definitely is. He has, over the years, Stephen, gone from a guy who was in the mailroom back in the early days of ESPN to one of the big time executives, and a man who has a lot of power there. He can make or break you, but also at the same time, not Jimmy, but Pat McAfee does have his supporters at ESPN. He was brought there for a reason, to bring a younger audience. He pays Aaron Rodgers to be on his show. And he doesn't, he's not a journalist. So he's not going to check anything that Rodgers says. He's not going to fact check him. He's just going to let Aaron Rodgers spout his nonsense on vaccines and the stuff about Anthony Fauci. And then this stuff, which is really, I have a feeling that he could be sued in court by Jimmy Kimmel for slander. Because he came over and it's what stating reckless. I mean, it's not libel; it's slander, basically. Basically, reckless disregard for the truth, slandering a public figure, taking his reputation and just throwing it in the trash. But that, I don't think Aaron Rodgers cares, because he talked today about about cancel culture and how ESPN statements apologizing for what he said was just ridiculous. So, you know what you're going to get with Rodgers. You know what you're going to get with Pat McAfee. It's not a traditional show. It's not a traditional talk show. It's not like Stephen A. Smith. But what ESPN wants, they want to get the headlines. They want to be able to get something that's going to be getting headlines, whether it's good or bad. And I think as long as as long as Pat McAfee is there, this is what you're going to get. And I think ESPN knew what they were getting with Pat McAfee. They know what that Aaron Rodgers is there, and they have to make their bet and lie in it, because until they make a decision to either get rid of Pat McAfee, or Pat McAfee decides to end the relationship, this is what they're going to get every week. And as long as they call it Aaron Rodgers Tuesday, and that's what he does, and he's going to spout nonsense, and that's what's going to happen. And as long as he's there, and as long as ESPN continues to have this relationship with Pat McAfee, we're going to be talking about this every week.
Yeah, it's kind of sad that ESPN has kind of reverted back into like a shock jock, already with Stephen A, Chris Russo, and now this. So you let go very qualified people in order to get McAfee. And I know there have been chatters about if both of them will eventually divorce and go separate ways. And I hope whoever did this, at ESPN, I hope it's worth it, because you're tanking your own reputation. And I don't know if ESPN is able to recover from this if they continue to let Rodgers speak out like they did the last couple of weeks. And the ESPN certainly have no one else to blame but themselves. If they lose a sponsorship, or if they, eventually have to cut their losses with Pat McAfee. McAfee can go anywhere he wants, and he can be on his own like he was previously. So no harm, no foul for, McAfee. But, ESPN probably at this point stands to lose a lot. So
right.
It will be very, very interesting to see where these two marriages go moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's it's like I said, I think ESPN knew what they were getting with him. They knew that he's going to be he's not a journalist. He's a personality. They put him on College Game Day, and I think they see a future with him. Now, whether Norby Williamson likes him or not, and whether he gets the influence or gets the influence to get him off the air, that's another thing. But right now, I think he has the support at ESPN, and so for now, he's going to be there until we hear otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ken, listen, thanks for your time again, as always. Thankfully, we were able to make it without you being out of power up in Rhode Island. So I'll let you go. Hope you were able to make it through the night, and stay safe out there. Thank you very much for staying with us and watching our show. Please follow each other on our respective work in our social media. Ken can be found on at Fangs Bites, and also writes and edits the sports media blog Awful Announcing. I write for beargoggleson.com, and you could also follow me on Twitter as well. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, and look forward to doing this again next week, Ken. Have a wonderful evening, everybody.
Good night, everyone.